Hey, what is going on everybody, and welcome to Fantasia. For today, we're going to be jumping into another session of Epic 7 Now today. Got another tier list for you guys. This time around, we're going to be covering the 7th anniversary RGB 5-star Selector tickets that you're going to be getting with this upcoming patch, and we're going to be getting a lot of them, right? So this is a great way for us to round out our rosters for newer players and for returning players. You're able to snag up a bunch of units that can help you in your PvE gameplay, as well as kind of dip your toes into the PvP scene. Okay, so this tier list is going to cover both PvE and PvP reasoning behind their placements here. But also do keep in mind that this tier list, if you've been playing every single day for the past 7 years, this is probably not something that's going to be super useful for you. But if you are a newer or returning player, or someone who just wants general advice of what to kind of go for, right? Especially the units that you don't have and you're kind of stuck between 2 or 3 to choose from with your tickets, then this is the video for you, okay? So we're going to start off with the tiers on the left side. So the tier list is broken down here, as you can see. We have the S tier, which in my opinion is the must-own category. Units that are really strong and prevalent in the current meta, but also super versatile across the board in PvE content as well. We have the A tier, which is generally strong units that are pretty good with their skills, can fit into various team comps, and act as really good general support, right? Very few PvE units will kind of fit in here, but a majority of this is going to be tailored towards PvP. When it comes to the B tier category, we have the average tier. So these are units that we'll see use here and there. They're kind of more niche, right? Generally, I like to refer to them as pocket picks, where people bring them out in times of desperation or times of need, and they're usually specialized in terms of their gear or their loadouts and stuff to kind of fill in the kind of gaps situationally against your opponent, right? And then we have the C tier, which I like to call the Waifu and Husbando tier. These are the units that are generally not very good right now. They kind of need a bit of a buff, right? But one disclaimer that I do want to put out there is if you are new to the game or if you're returning to the game and there's a unit that you just really, really love, get them. Why not? Play the game how you want to play it. Every unit can be used in some form, in some fashion. If you can't use them in RTA, you can use them in Arena, you can use them in Guild Wars, you can use them in PvE, right? Every unit has a thing that they can do. And if you're playing the game and you're not able to get your favorite character, what's the point of playing, right? Have some fun, enjoy yourself, and disregard this tier list, at least for like your top pick, right? We're gonna get enough selectors that you'll get the units that you'll need, and then you'll also maybe pick like 1 or 2 units that you really want, right? Enjoy the game, have some fun with it. 2 things that you need to note here is that there's a free category, so all the units here, including Yuna, Bomb Model Kana, Surmia, Sigrid, Vivian, Brig, and Tamarin are all available for free. The units of Iseria and Mort are going to be here because when you're a newer player and you're playing, you will get an Episode 1 and Episode 3 unit and artifact selector, okay? And one of the units that's available, I believe, in the Episode 1 selector is Iseria. She is very, very good in PvE content. She is very niche in like Guild Wars and stuff. She does have a very powerful skill to allow you to reset cooldowns off of a single unit, right, to max out their cooldowns again, and you can use your skills once more. So she is really strong, very powerful, but you can get her for free in the Episode 1 selector. Mort is the same thing, but for the Episode 3 selector. He is one of the strongest units in the entire game right now, and in my last tier list, I did put him in the S tier, the must-own category, but yeah, he is available in the Episode 3 selector, so do keep that in mind. Okay, moving on, we are going to take a look at the limited and collab units. I'm not going to go through the entire list here, but any unit that is a collaboration unit, right? Things from the Slime anime, what is it called? Guilty Gear collaboration, right? The Aspa units, the Overlord collab, the Full Metal collab, the ReZero collab, all those units are unavailable here. And so are all of the limited and seasonal units, anything from DN's release, from the original limited banner, all the way to Rinok, who is actually a limited unit that had come out recently. All of these are unavailable for pick. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the categories now. Let's go down the list. Starting with the S tier category, I'm going to give you guys a bit of a short, brief reasoning for why each unit is in each category, right? So that it can help you kind of analyze and pick and choose, but I don't want to keep this video too long. So starting off, we have Selene. Selene is probably going to be the most sought after unit, especially with the release of Witch of the Mirror Tenebria coming out. And Selene is going to be one of the hardest counters into her, theoretically on paper. We'll have to see how it works out in practice. But Selene is also super strong right now because so many openers use non-attack skills. Right, we have ML Politis, we have ML Peyra. So many units like Soul Weavers and such are pretty fast too, like Frida. We have Diane as well. Selene is just such a strong and versatile unit. Pretty much a must-own for anyone who is looking to enter the PvP scene. Next up, we have Fire Politis, and I'm actually going to slap her here into the must-own category. She got bumped up from the A tier because right now she counters so many units. So many strong things with, especially with, what's-her-face, Ahmed, who's a limited unit, who got a recent buff with her EE. She's going to be even faster, going to be very prevalent in terms of aggressive team comps out there. But Politis having combat readiness gains as well is super strong because it stops your opponent from bridging their units, like gaining combat readiness to cut your team in terms of going for an aggressive or a cleave comp. Politis is just getting more and more value with every passing unit release, right? Ever since her initial release, she's been super solid. Next up, we have Genoa, who is an absolute demonic powerhouse. Pair him with Emma Politis, or don't pair him with Politis at all. Just get him damaged enough that he falls below half his health, he procs his passive, he gets the rage buff, and he just starts decimating everything. You don't even need the best gear on him. He will just shred through things with his penetration on his defense, right? He'll just penetrate your opponent's defense, slice through them like butter. Absolutely amazing in RTA, in terms of guild wars and arenas. Really, really strong. Next up, we have Fene, actually. Surprisingly, a unit that was released for PvE content, but really strong in PvP as well. She's a good counter into injury-style teams, and she'll carry you throughout your fire expeditions, your wyvern hunts, and across multiple avenues of PvE. She's going to be incredibly powerful. She has good healing for the team, she has a self-revive, and she inflicts injury onto your opponents as well, while also being able to take a lot of injury damage herself. She inflicts it on herself. She is literally a counter to injury teams, right? So very good in a bruiser v bruiser matchup. Solid pickup all around. Next up, another Soul Weaver, we have Rowana. Rowana's always been a pretty much staple in the S tier in the must-own category. She trivializes a lot of PvE content that's out there, especially things in the Abyss, but she is also really good in terms of certain hunts, certain expeditions, right? Like especially the Ice Expedition, very powerful there. And she actually has some pretty good usage in PvP too, against certain teams that have a lot of counter or extra attacks. So definitely a nice little pickup, and at worst, she's going to be a niche pick in PvP, right? And last but not least, I put Fire Litica, kind of bumped her up from the A tier up to the S tier. She is so powerful right now in the current meta that she is essentially needed, and she stops things like your opponent's Empyrean Illanovs, your opponent's Bossarunkas with her Restrict. Yeah, very good pickup here, and she also ignores resistance with her S2, which snowballs into her ignore resistance on her S3. She has defense break in her S3 as well, skill nullifier for your team. She's a super strong supportive unit. Even if you don't have the fastest gear out there, she's still really good in terms of setting up. Even in Guild Wars, there's going to be certain teams that are, you know, slower in terms of speed, more tanky, more defensive. She allows you to shred through those types of teams pretty effortlessly. So definitely a strong pickup if you don't have her. Next up, for the A tier, the strong category, we're going to start off with Abigail. Really strange to see Abigail here in the strong tier. By the way, none of these units are really placed in order. They're just in their own respective categories. So if you see something at the start of the A tier, doesn't mean that they're better than all the other units that come after. It's just that they all belong in this category. okay? But Abigail here is very good because of her immortality buff for the unit in the back line. And it's really good because there's a lot of immortality units that are out there, but also a lot of frail and squishy DPSs. So even if you can't pull her off in RTA, which, by the way, most people will let her through in RTA, there's bigger threats to ban, she actually can allow you to trap your opponent in various cases where they can't really attack the backline unit, otherwise they'll give them the immortality and vampirism, but they also need to burst her down, but she's also a pretty tanky bruiser herself, and she has some good debuffs with defense break and curse as well. So yeah, pretty versatile unit here, definitely deserving of being in the A tier, very niche pick in certain cases, but also very, very powerful in her own right. Moving on, we have Arya getting snatched up here. Oh, sorry, one other thing with Abigail that I want to keep in mind. Abigail, as of right now, with Tristan Wolfe had done a ton of testing with Abigail and potentially the block debuff, right? That'll come out with the Witch of the Mirror Tenebria. Abigail will actually cleanse the unit in the backline when there's the block debuff active. So do keep that in mind. I don't know if it's a bug or if something's weird, but with Witch of the Mirror Tenebria coming out and it potentially being meta-changing and game-breaking, we see Abigail as a potential sort of weird answer to her, potentially. So yeah, that's an interaction that you can keep in mind. It might get patched eventually in the future, but as of recording this video right now, you know, July 6th, no, it should still work. Okay, next up is Arya. Arya here is, she was in the S tier category in my last tier list, but I'm gonna knock her down to A tier. She's really strong in PvE, will trivialize a lot of Abyss content, especially for newer players, but in terms of PvP scene, she's really not super great right now. High resist Aryas could still probably do a lot of work, actually, but with the Great Mortellix around, yeah, this Mort right here that people can get for free for completing episode 3, yeah, with Mort around, you're not really going to be countering, and she is going to struggle. Not to say that she's bad, I've definitely had matchups where I've beaten teams with Mort on the other side, but yeah, Arya is just going to not be as good as she was previously, with Mort being so dominant right now in the current meta. Alright, next up we have Destina, very good healer, both for PvE and PvE content. With the advent of Nightmare Raid going away by the end of this month, she is going to see a little bit less use on the PvE side, but a full team revive with good healing, good CR pushing, good sustain, and fantastic cleansing. It's really hard to beat her as a really solid PvE support unit. Also usable in PvP as well. Just keep in mind that healers that are more dedicated towards healing and cleansing are typically a little bit weaker in terms of the super aggressive meta that we're currently seeing, with a lot of units dealing a lot of damage, especially if they're still support units. Right, Bossarunka and other units with a bunch of splash damage built into them, Empyrean Ilanov built on damage usually. Yeah, it's going to be hard to sustain and hard to justify picking a unit that's dedicated to healing when you can have a unit that potentially heals and buffs and such, right? Things like DN, who is unfortunately a limited unit, but DN being a fantastic option that cleanses the team but also provides useful buffs, barriers, and mitigation as well. Okay, next up we have Elena. Elena's up here because Firelitica is up here. So Elena's a fantastic counter into more aggressive teams out there. Anything that opens up with an AoE attack, like Firelitica, who prefers to do that, is wonderful for her. I've been using her quite a bit as a ban protection slot against AoE teams, and she is essentially like a one-man army, right? She stops your opponent from doing stuff, full team invincibility, gives you additional resist buff, which pairs very well with like potentially Disciplinary Prefect Arya, who's a recent ML5 that was released, who boosts the resistance of your team. Ellen is one of the few units that can give the full team a resist buff, so very solid there. Now, speaking of high resist units, Elvira, usually built with high resistance, good speed, but she shuts down Fighting Spirit completely. I'm putting her in the A tier because Young Senya, who unfortunately is a limited unit, but Young Senya with the Great Mortellix is a very common defense team that you'll see, and if you don't want your opponent to have Young Senya proc and destroy your team, Elvira shuts down her Fighting Spirit gain and allows you to kind of comfortably do whatever you want throughout the entire fight, right? So definitely something to keep in mind. She's also an ice unit, which means she will draw the aggro, naturally, of your opponent's Earth units, which include Young Senya and Mort. So Elvira becomes a really great tank for your team, especially because she has 3 turns of immortality, and with super high resistance, there's no way for your opponent to dispel them. So very, very good pickup here as a Floodgate unit. Next up, I'm not sure if he's going to be available here, but I'm going to throw all the RGB units into the tier list anyway. Guard Captain Crow. If you are able to select him, very strong nuke, very good pickup. I usually use him to nuke down threats on my opponent's side that I really don't want them to have, like Bystander Hua Young. Units that are usually super tanky, you can ignore their defense and attack them, right? And he scales really well with defense, and with usually an HP scaling meta that we have for bruisers, having a defense scaler lets you kind of not care about units with injury and such, so he is a really solid pickup. Next up we have Ice Crow. So Ice Crow got buffed and he's a really great mitigation knight, especially for earlier game players. You want to mitigate damage. He has really good mitigation built into his kit. He doesn't have a passive or anything, but he also carries a defense buff. If you get his EE here, he can get a 100% provoke. He has a really good nuke on his S3 as well. So he is just an all-around solid unit. Just watch out for injury units that are running around in PvP. So next up we have Knockwall being added to the A tier. She is actually a very powerful unit, allowing you to kind of reset your opponent's skill cooldowns, and also has an S2 that can seal your opponent, which is really powerful. On a 2-turn cooldown with a speed buff that she grants herself, she's going to turn cycle quite a bit. Very strong control unit. The only downside is that she is an fire element, so it does mean that you will kind of struggle against the ice matchups. The good news is that there aren't really many good ice units in the meta right now, so she's gonna have a pretty good time. It's a lot of earth domination right now in terms of Mort being on the field, with Celine being able to control things, right? There's just not a lot of ice units to go about that really hinder her application. Speaking of ice units though, we have Ron and Peyra, both two of the fastest units in the game, right? Ron has the highest base speed in the game, 129 base speed, rivals that of Rinok and Kayron, and Peyra has 128 base speed, also incredibly fast. And these two units are actually decent here for just being able to go first. If you are lacking speed gear, if you put your best speed gear on the highest base speed units in the game, it's going to scale your gear really nicely and allow you to kind of take first turn. Ron and Peyra might see a bit more usage with things like your Argent Waves Hua Young being a thing that's newly released. It's currently on a banner right now. Two really good units. Ron with an AoE defense break can help set up for Hua Young really nicely when she goes for AoE attack. Peyra also has just good buffs like Escort and such. She also has Restrict on her S2, that's AoE, so if you attack your opponents, apply Restrict to them, then they won't be able to push up. So your opponent's Bossa Runkas, Empyrean Ilanovs and such, they're really annoying. You do have ways to kind of shut them down too. I do put them under Fire Litica because Fire Litica just has so much going for her that Ron and Peyra just really can't compare, even though they are faster than Litica. Yeah, Litica is just invaluable with the amount of protection she gives with the skill nullifier and the amount of team support she puts out, but these two are still not bad options in terms of speed units. And last but not least, in the A tier, I have Eligos. Eligos has been an absolute demonic powerhouse. Not in the same way as Genoa, where you're just one-shotting everything. Eligos actually sets up for your other units to kill, and then when your other units kill your opponent's units, then he'll proc his passive and essentially one-shot another unit for free, right? He's a really good, strong DPS unit, and his EE allows him to stealth at the start of the fight. He carries quite a bit of utility with his dual attack that he can do as well if he grants himself a greater attack buff, right, with his S2. He also has a built-in 50% extra hit chance, and he has resource reduction as well. So you can, if you're having trouble with Afternoon Soak Flans, definitely pick up an Eligos. He makes dealing with her so much easier, and he essentially will either one-shot her, or if he doesn't, he'll bring her so close that your teammate can just finish off the job, and then he'll proc Eligos' S2, right? So either way, you're going to get rid of her off the field, and it's really nice. The extra hit chance is what makes him so strong. Okay, moving on into the B tier category, I'm just going to throw these three units down here. The three bruisers, right? Fire Bruiser in terms of Ravi, the Ice Bruiser in terms of Shu, and an Earth Bruiser in terms of Valencia. Bruisers are units that scale off of their HP. Now, while Ravi does scale off of her attack, she does convert her HP into attack as well with her passive, so it's really nice. These three units are in the average tier because they're really strong and resilient, and in the case of things like Valencia, she can pair really well with young Senya as well, especially if you don't have Mort yet. But if you don't have Mort, you should be getting Mort, by the way. These three units are really solid in certain matchups. Usually Ravi and Shu are going to be built on counter, right? And Alencia is either built on speed or injury or destruction or something of that sort. But yeah, you get a lot of value from these guys, especially early on in the game. They can be really good in PvE content as well, being a resilient DPS unit that kind of scales their damage, right, pretty nicely. Especially as you level up your account and rank up. So yeah, they're pretty solid, just not super viable in RTA right now. You can pick them in certain circumstances. Just keep in mind that Shu is a little bit lower than she once was because Mort and other Earth units are so prevalent. Alencia is really solid right now, and Fire Ravi can be decent against certain Earth units and matchups. Just keep in mind that with Mort around, you can't counter with Fire Ravi, so she does fall off a little bit in that regard too. Next up, in terms of counters, we're gonna put Charles up here. He actually moved up from the Husbando tier to the average tier. Now I might be a little bit biased. Charles is one of my favorite characters in the entire game, but his recent buff actually made him pretty good as a pocket pick. Very nice unit to bring out sometimes, especially if Mort is not around. Yeah, really solid in terms of buffs that you can apply for the team, the amount of damage output that he has, the combat readiness push for his team as well when he uses his S2. Pretty solid, well-rounded unit. And while he might seem super stat hungry, just forego the effectiveness, build him on some damage, some bulk, and a little bit of effect resistance, and you're good to go. Right, next up, speaking of effectiveness, let's go for Senya here. I tried using Senya in RTA and in the Epic 7 World Championship preliminaries. She's actually a pretty decent unit, I'd say. So yeah, build her with effectiveness. She actually can lock down your opponent really easily. Not a lot of people are stacking a ton of effect resist nowadays, and if they are, you can tell which units that they are going to be running, like, you know, Disciplinary Prefect Arya and such, right? Those kinds of units. But outside of those specific units, Senya should be able to lock down a lot of your opponent's units, especially good into Bossarunka, I found surprisingly, because when you provoke the units that Bossarunka is protecting that you can't target for attacks, when they attack into Senya, she reflects some of the damage into them, but then Senya will counterattack and re-provoke them, and so you have those units in the back line, typically squishier units, just kind of killing themselves on your Senya, which is really, really nice. It's a kind of a nice little loophole to use. Again, pocket pick status, but a nice little loophole to use against Bossarunka sometimes. Next up we have Yoha. She's kind of a weaker Crow here. She has a really good nuke as well, but yeah, because she doesn't have built-in mitigation like Crow does after his buff, she's going to be a tier lower than him. Next up we have Sharoon. I think she's actually a pretty niche pocket pick here, pretty good as a counter into DN, who is a really strong unit right now. Any units that buff the team for quite a bit, in terms of like status buffs, like defense up, attack up, barriers, immunity and stuff, Sharoon actually has a really good time just dispelling all that, and she's a pretty strong control unit with Venom to injury down your opponents as well, and a cooldown increase on her S1, so you kind of you lock down your opponent from using a skill on one of their units, right? Speaking of skill resets, we have Lua here. Now, both Lua and Sharoon are ranked below Knockwall, because I think Knockwall is just a way better version of Lua here. But I think Lua, with the extra turn that she gets, is actually not bad. I think that sleeping a unit and also being able to blanket, like reset your opponent's cooldowns, is a very powerful thing, especially since some people are starting to build up more units for the Lunatic draft format. Lua is really nice, especially when all the faster units get picked, like your ML Politises, ML Peiras, and all that good stuff, right? I think Lua has a place here. She's just not as great as Knockwall because she can't seal your opponent, but she's still pretty solid. And of course, she is an Earth element compared to Knockwall, who is Fire, in a Earth-dominated meta right now, right? Namely Mort. Next up we have a couple of DPSs, so I'm going to slap them in here right now real quick. So we have Melissa, who's a great little fire DPS mage who can hold book as well. Good damage, has some immortality that can be built, that can be procced with her S2 at will, which is kind of nice. You have Sez, who can bomb your opponents with a Sez bomb, and he is pretty nice in arena, a pretty good combo for things like Argent Wave Swa Young and other really strong DPSs out there. Really good cleanup unit, essentially, a cleanup crew. He's just not as good of a cleanup unit, I think, as Eligos is, so he is ranked a little bit lower. Yufine is also a really solid nuke out here that can be paired with a bunch of units, especially Zio, who guarantees first turn, but you can pair her with any other unit out here that inflicts any debuffs. She can also be used with ML Politis and stuff. You don't have to inflict a debuff with an attack skill. As long as a unit inflicts a debuff onto your opponent, Yufine can jump up in combat readiness, and you're good to go. Ludwig as well is a very niche nuke, but yeah, I've seen some people with some degenerate builds on him with high resist and stuff. Very powerful unit that gets more powerful if you have invincibility on him, which he provides himself, but the trouble is you have to get to his turn, right? So a bit of a niche pick, but very strong when he is able to work. As a mage, he is able to hold book for himself as well to Soulburn. Next up, I'm putting Robin here in the average tier. Typically, I would put her up here because she is currently used in Rift right now, and Rift units are very, very high priority, but with so many good units up there, I can't really bring myself to do that right now. She is amazing in Rift. She can solo Rift after a certain point as well, but her limited usability in PvP kind of hinders her a little bit. I thought she had some promise as a PvP burn unit, like for fun, but she's so difficult to pull off in the current meta that I don't think it's really worth it. So I'm putting her in the average tier right here. If you're trying to clear Rift and you're a returning player and you have a lot of these units up here, yeah, then definitely prioritize like a Robin to help you with Rift for farming, especially for this anniversary event where we're going to be getting Hunt buffs and Rift buffs all throughout the next like 2 months. She's going to be a really good value pickup. And then next up we have a Schneel. Schneel is really good into poison units and such, and venom units, so think about DDR, right? A very niche scenario, but Schneel could help in that regard. Kayron in an Immortality meta, Kayron actually doesn't really bring all that much compared to things like Amiki and BBK, but he could be a niche little pickup sometimes in certain cases. I wouldn't say that he's absolutely amazing or anything, but the Immortality and the evasion and stuff that he gets can sometimes pay off. And again, we're in an Earth meta, kind of hard to hit him when he has an evasion buff. It'll guarantee that your opponent's Earth units always miss, so that's why he's up here and not quite down here. Next up we have Ida, also really good cleave unit. I guess I can kind of put her up here and bunch her up with the other damage dealers, but yeah, Ida's a fairly strong unit as well in terms of AoE damage, just not as good as certain other options I'd say, because again, in an Earth-dominated meta, where you have units that are very tanky and such, that people can use against you, like Mort, like Albedo like down here in the limited collab unit section. It's just hard for her to get the damage out, and being Ice Element, it's kind of iffy sometimes, right? And then next up we have Immortal Wukong. So the Immortal Wukong is actually not terrible, but it's also not great, because Afternoon Soak Flan is so prevalent right now in the meta, being a fire unit and has 100% evasion. She is down here, by the way. Also, can you guys see the pattern here? Limited and collab units are pretty good. Afternoon Soak Flan being down here, she is very, very strong right now. So the Immortal Wukong is not as great, because any units that guarantee crit are gonna essentially bypass his entire shtick, right? He essentially has a bunch of anti-crit crit resistance on him and penetration resistance, but Afternoon Soak Flan guarantees crits and does not penetrate defense, so she'll be dealing full damage to Wukong, and it sucks. But in certain cases where you're up against things like, let's say, Dragon Bride Senyas, Blood Moon Hastes, and your opponent's just stacking defense penetration units, he becomes very good. He's really strong against teams that lack dedicated DPSs and use more Bruisers and more Soul Weavers and more Knights, so he's actually better into tankier teams than he is into squishier teams. Alright, next up we have Ken and Zahak. Kind of weird to pair them together, but they're both kind of decent in PvE sometimes. Zahak you can use in some expeditions and such, he's okay. I guess if you build him fast enough, his resource reduction does allow you to deal with certain units, and his plus 50% hit chance is also pretty good, but essentially he is a worse version of Eligos, so do keep that in mind. Fire Ken, though, very strong in PvE content, super amazing in things like Golem. Obviously Nightmare Raid is going to be going away, but he's really good in Nightmare Raid too. And in general, he's just very powerful because he gets himself the Vigor buff, he gives himself the defense, he has 100% chance to defense break and ignores res when you get his S3 up, right? So this is really nice. He's a really good versatile unit. Next up we have Fire Lilius. Fire Lilius is a decent option against certain non-attack skill openers out there, but she isn't really super consistent. She's a decent DPS unit, decent cleanser, but the fact that she uses a non-attack skill sometimes also backfires, because then your opponent can just bait out your Lilius with things like Selene, so do keep that in mind. She is not bad because you can cleanse with an attack skill. She is one of the few units in the game that use an attack skill to full cleanse your team. The other one being like Holiday Yufine, who is a, say it with me guys, a limited unit. So yeah, but I'd say Holiday Yufine right now is in a better position than Fire Lilius, a bit better. But if you don't have Holiday Yufine and you want a budget cleanser, Fire Lilius is not terrible in that regard. Next up, we have 3 AoE defense breakers, all of different elements used in different PvE contexts. We have Fire Tenebria, Ice Luluka, and Earth Bellona. So all 3 of these units have really strong AoE defense breaks, varying from 85%, I think it's 85% chance defense break across the board here actually. Yeah, so really, really good. Overall. So Tenebria used in a lot of PvE content against earth things like the golem hunts, right? Luluka can be used in fire hunts, fire expeditions. Bellona can be used in Azimanic, can be used in against the Banshee hunt as well. Yeah, these units are all very solid in their own right, and they all provide good utility to the team as well. So for PvE content and clearing them, these 3 are very good. And last but not least, I'm going to slap Vildred in here, kind of an honorary mention, but also really good because he is one of the few speed imprints in the game, and being a 5-star unit with a speed imprint, he gives 12 speed to everyone on the team. Really, really powerful if you're just looking for some imprints, right, and you're a fast speed racer. But Vildred also really good farmer for the team as well, so do keep that in mind for PvE content. Pretty solid. But most people are going to have Free Spirit Tieria already, so you're not going to be in need of an AoE attacker like Vildred here, but still, really good unit in terms of PvP sometimes, just a bit niche. Alright, last but not least, we're going to quickly go through the Waifu and Husbando tier. I don't want us to make this video too long, but these are all units that are kind of subpar in some way. Haste is essentially a fire version of Ron, and even though his element is better than Ron in this current meta, I'd say, Haste just doesn't deliver as much as Ron does, unfortunately, so he's in the Husbando list. Command Model Leica, just not quite enough speed on her, not quite enough utility. She doesn't even have a strip for her S3, so it just kind of hinders her application quite a bit. Ice Flan, really nice for setting up your team, but honestly, Ahmed, who is a, say it with me guys, a limited unit, is just better as of right now, but Flan is pretty decent. In certain cases, you could probably make her work, but because you're so dedicated to a non-attack skill, and you don't have any team protection like Ahmed does, Ahmed gives everyone a skill nullifier, which prevents Celine from killing you. Flan doesn't have that, so Celine will kill you. Alright, next up is Mui. Mui is an interesting unit that actually opens with an attack skill, but because her base speed is kind of bad, she's kind of bad. We also have Kawarik and Kisei, who actually have pretty good speeds, but they just don't have enough staying power on the field. Neither of them have any protection built into their kit, and they don't deal enough damage against your opponent. So against super tanks like Bossarunka, Empyrean Ilanov, and all those likes that are really meta right now, it's a super tank meta, tank down meta, these two just don't see any use whatsoever. Next up we have Pavel, also really strong AoE DPS unit. I'd say you can argue that he goes in the average tier, but there's so many other DPSs that you can be using. Even Commander Pavel, the ML version of Pavel, isn't really used that much right now. I'd say, yeah, honestly, if you're trying to go for a Pavel, Sezbomb is pretty strong, Yufine nukes are really good, even Ludwig probably has a bit more application than Pavel does. He has a good base speed, he can go first, he can open up for you potentially, but he does require soul burns, and he is not a mage, so he can't hold his own book to soul burn himself. So it requires a bit more team comp for him. Fumir, just too much investment for too little reward. She does put a 2-turn sleep on your opponent, which is really nice, but why do all the setup to try to get an earth unit and a fire unit on the same team as her, when you can just run the Great Mortelix S3 and just fear everyone for 2 turns and pray that they don't snap out of it, right? Obviously fear is not as great as guaranteed sleep for 2 turns, but it's so free, and a potential 2-turn control skill for free on a unit that shuts down all counterattacks, and a unit that's so bulky, deals a ton of damage, ignores resistance, and has defense breaks in his kit. A little bit too good, right? So Fumir, unfortunately, just doesn't quite cut it. Lilibet is a good DPS unit. She actually has really good scaling for her damage numbers, but compared to other DPS units and the fact that she doesn't have anything that prevents her from dying, at least Sez has, you know, the Tempest Serum passive, he can't take more than 51% of his max health as damage. Melissa has Immortality. Yufine can at least, like, guarantee one-shots against a lot of units and stuff. Ludwig has Invincibility in his kit. Like, Lilibet doesn't have any of that, so it's just quite unfortunate. Hua Young and Arunka both are meant to just kind of nuke big tanky bosses. The unfortunate thing is that their modifiers are, their attack modifiers are so bad that they really can't. Hua Young needs way too much investment that if you're going down the route of investing into a Hua Young, you can probably already cleave or go aggro with your opponent with other types of units out here. And Arunka, if you're not attacking somebody with a barrier, you're not killing them. And if you are attacking someone with a barrier, there's a 50% chance that you're not killing them. So they definitely need to really up Arunka's damage and like essentially give her like full penetration against units with barriers, or just let her just one-shot units with barriers. Like, come on, let her do something. She has not seen use in ever. Okay, next up is Fire Araminta. Last time I kind of put her up in the average tier for testing purposes, but after testing purposes, I guess Araminta, you can put Bihu in here as well. These two burn units, when RTA was getting the frenzy changes and we're seeing like the burns get additional damage and stuff in the frenzy, I thought they might have potential, but just looking at them right now, even though they're fire element and they're pretty good in the meta, that element is good in the meta, these two have not shown any promise whatsoever. Araminta does seem some play as a pocket pick in previous seasons, but right now I think most people are just gravitating towards Silverblade Araminta, her ML5 version, because she is just so much better. She has incredible win rates right now, even in the higher leagues. Basar, too slow, just horrible base speed. Brigitte, amazing debuff in the form of block. It's just unfortunate that we're about to get an ML5 that has an AoE block that is applied to everyone on the opponent's team, and Brigitte will unfortunately be relegated to absolutely nothing. So, yeah. Ilanov is okay, but if you're looking for injury damage dealers, it's probably best to just go with Alencia. Honestly, Fene is also much better right now than Ilanov is. She just needs a buff. She needs to be more consistent. Her S1 does nothing, and every time you go for an S1, you're just praying that she procs an S2 instead. Fire Cecilia got put out of a job because Brig is free, and Brig is pretty much used in every single piece of content that Fire Cecilia was used in before, so rest in peace, Fire Cecilia. Ice Tywin, he can't cleanse, sleep, stuns, fears, and stuff unless the person in the backline is actually hit. So if there's a non-attack skill that happens that puts things to sleep or stuns things or whatever, Tywin doesn't proc. He also doesn't proc off bombs being detonated, which is really silly, and for that reason he's down here. There's better cleansers to use, right? Ray is a cleanser that is basically overshadowed by every other cleanser in the game, unfortunately. If you want to use Ray, just use Destina. She's kind of better in every aspect. Next up we have Fire Charlotte. Fire Charlotte guarantees crits on things, but she's really weak, and Fire Flan just does her job a better, right? Fire Flan guarantees crits, also has an AoE on her S1. Fire Charlotte needs to have a buff to AoE on her S1. Fire Afternoon Soak Flan does not, and Charlotte's S3, while it hits pretty decently hard, is not as good as Fire Flan's single target nuke that also defense breaks, right? Kane is Kane, and he doesn't really do anything. They tried buffing him, but it didn't do stuff. Irvelin, Midnight God Lilius is just a better Irvelin, but Midnight God Lilius is a limited unit, right? So even if you wanted Midnight God Lilius, Irvelin's not a good substitution. Midnight God Lilius has a really good damage limit buff that limits the amount of damage she takes to 35% of her max health. Irvelin has nothing to protect him. So much like Cowrick and Kisei, he just kind of dies to one tap to anything. Fenris, people have been trying to make him work. I don't think he's really seen much success. Even with his new EE and stuff, people say he's pretty decent like aggro and cleave teams. I've never run into one, so I can't really tell. So for right now, for me personally, out of my experiences, not really worth picking up. Chloe has a really unique buff in the form of Magic Nail, and it's pretty decent for PvE applications, but is it worth using a selector ticket for her? I don't really think so, not personally. Teiyu's here because Teiyu is Teiyu. Hasn't really done all that much, unfortunately. I can see the concept behind his design, but it doesn't really pan out in the way I think the devs want it to. And Violet as well. Evasion is only 55%, so yeah, there's like Afternoon Soak Flan that has 100% evasion, and other units that have 70% evasion with artifacts, and up to 90% evasion if you use Lone Wolf Pero with them. Violet is unfortunately not one of those units that really benefits from any of that, so he needs higher evasion, otherwise his whole shtick just doesn't work. And then also because Eligos exists, right, and Zahak exists, so they have extra hit chance. They can basically one-shot and obliterate Violet at any point. And last but not least, Balance is on. Really decent PvE unit, actually, but I'm putting him here because Tenebria is just better than Ball in most cases. Yeah, he has some decent damage, though. Pretty good in things like Ancient Inheritance, but I would not use a Selector to get a unit just for Ancient Inheritance. But yeah, this is it, guys. The entire tier list right in front of your eyes. The 7th anniversary RGB 5-star selectors. Let me know what you think with the placements of these units here. I'm speaking from the perspective of someone who always plays in the upper echelons of RTA, around the higher champion range. I'm usually gate-kept by all the better players than me. But yeah, let me know if you agree or disagree with any of the placements here, right? What would you move and why? With that being said though, guys, hopefully this video has helped you. If it has, please leave a like and subscribe for more tier lists for this upcoming anniversary update. And I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.